Most survival games give you a fighting chance. Project Zomboid gives you a death sentence and lets you pick the font. Every single mechanic in this game is designed to kill you, and not in a flashy, dramatic way, but through a slow, inevitable chain of failures that starts the moment you step outside. Today I'm breaking down exactly why these zombies are basically impossible to survive, starting with the one rule that guarantees you'll be found: line of sight. Here's something most players don't figure out until it's too late. Windows don't hide you. That glass-walled office building you barricaded yourself into? Every zombie outside can see you like you're standing in an open field. Only fully opaque walls and solid doors actually break line of sight. Glass is functionally invisible to the detection system, which means half the buildings players assume are safe are basically fishbowls. But that's just the beginning of the problem. On a clear, unobstructed sightline, zombies detect you from 30 to 40 tiles away. Start moving or making any noise, and that range jumps to 50 tiles or more. That's half a city block. And once a single zombie spots you, its pathfinding updates every half second, locked onto your last known position. That alert state doesn't just fade either. It persists for 10 to 15 in-game minutes after the last sighting. One glance and you're marked. Stealth helps. Technically, walking while crouched cuts detection range by 40 to 50%, but the second you sprint, that advantage vanishes completely. And here's the structural trap nobody talks about. The map is enormous, resources are scattered, and long-term survival demands you cross open ground constantly. You physically cannot stay hidden and stay alive. The game forces you into the exact sight lines that get you killed. This is the quiet mechanic that starts every death in Project Zomboid. You don't die because a zombie caught you. You die because one saw you. But being spotted is only step one, because what happens next is where things get truly hopeless. Window lunging. Every survival game teaches you the same lesson. Get inside, close the windows, you're safe. Project Zomboid teaches you that lesson too. Then it kills you for believing it. Here's the thing about windows in this game. They look like barriers. They feel like barriers. Your brain registers glass and a frame and says, okay, that's a wall with a view. But mechanically, windows are entry points. Entry points that zombies will smash through without hesitation. Zombies can lunge through windows from a full tile away, and these attacks deal full bite and scratch damage. Not reduced damage, not through barrier damage, full, unfiltered, you're standing right next to them damage. And the speed of it is brutal. By the time you hear the glass shatter and register what's happening, the zombie is already on top of you. If the zombie has already spotted you through the glass, it's already locked on and heading straight for that window. So the moment you've been seen, your safe window position becomes a kill box. But surely barricading helps, right? It does, technically. Barricades add durability that zombies have to break through before they can get inside. Planks buy you time, metal bars buy you more, but they don't make the window invincible. A group of zombies will tear through barricades eventually, and then you're right back to square one. And if you think curtains fix this, they only block line of sight. If a zombie already knows you're in there from noise or from spotting you before you close them, curtains do absolutely nothing to stop the assault. This is why early game graveyards are full of players who did everything right. Found a house, closed the windows, set up a base. The most intuitive survival strategy in the genre is a reliable death sentence in Project Zomboid. Your instincts aren't just wrong, they're weaponized against you. And lunging through glass is honestly the least creative way these zombies will ruin your day. Wait until you see what happens when they catch you from behind. Fence tripping. Let's talk about the dumbest way to die in Project Zomboid. Not the most dramatic, not the most unfair, the dumbest. You're sprinting through a neighborhood. There's a horde behind you. You see a fence, and your brain says, jump it. Completely reasonable, totally logical. And it gets you killed. Here's the thing. Sprinting across any fence, gate, or even a hedge tile triggers a trip animation that locks your character in place for up to 2 full seconds while they stand back up. 2 seconds doesn't sound like much until you realize a zombie can close a massive gap in that window. You went from escaping to serving yourself on a plate, but wait, it gets better. The trip itself generates noise equivalent to running footsteps, audible to zombies within 8 to 12 tiles. So not only did you stop moving, you just rang the dinner bell. Every zombie in the area that wasn't already chasing you, now they are. And the injuries. Lacerations and sprains happen in 40 to 60% of fence trips, depending on what you're wearing. Heavier encumbrance increases fall damage by 15 to 30%, meaning the more supplies you're carrying, the harder you fall, and the louder you land. The game is literally punishing you for being prepared. The worst part? You can't skill your way out of this. Once the trip triggers, it triggers. The only prevention is movement discipline, specifically not sprinting through fences. Which sounds obvious sitting here reading about it. It sounds painfully obvious. Every veteran will tell you, just don't panic run through fences like it's the easiest thing in the world. Then a horde appears behind them, and their survival instinct kicks in and they vault that fence at full speed like every single time before. Nobody is immune to this. The fence doesn't care how many hours you have. It just waits. But if tripping over a fence sounds embarrassing, wait until you see what happens when zombies actually get their hands on you. Exertion. Here's the most counterintuitive thing about Project Zomboid. Running away will kill you faster than standing your ground. Let me explain. Your stamina depletes at 100 points every 5 seconds of continuous sprinting. That sounds manageable until you realize your body only recovers to 50% of its maximum before forcing you into a walk state. You never get full stamina back during an active chase. Ever. The tank starts half empty and only gets worse from there. But here's where it gets really ugly. Once your stamina drops below 30%, your attack damage and weapon accuracy both nosedive by 35 to 45%. So, the moment you stop running and try to fight, you're swinging like a toddler with a pool noodle. Doesn't matter if you've got a baseball bat, a fire axe, or 200 hours of experience. The math doesn't care about your skill level, and it gets worse. Panic, which triggers automatically when zombies get close or you've recently been injured, accelerates your stamina drain by 30%. Read that again. The situations that demand running the most are the exact situations where running costs the most. You see a horde, your character panics, your stamina evaporates faster, you exhaust sooner, you can't fight back, you die. It's a compounding death spiral baked directly into the code. Let's say you do burn through everything and hit 0 stamina. Recovery requires 15 to 20 seconds of standing completely still. In a game where zombies are actively chasing you, standing still for 20 seconds. That's not a recovery mechanic, that's a death sentence with extra steps. This is why veterans don't run. They plan controlled retreats. They preposition fallback points. They jog instead of sprint. Because the game about escaping zombies is mechanically designed to punish you for escaping zombies. Your survival instinct says run. The game says running is how you lose. But at least exertion only punishes your legs. The next mechanic punishes your entire ability to function as a human being. Moodles. Here's where Project Zomboid stops being a zombie game and starts being a psychological horror simulator. Because Moodles aren't just status effects. They're a self-reinforcing collapse engine designed to make sure that once you start losing, you lose faster. The game tracks over 10 individual status conditions simultaneously: exhaustion, hunger, thirst, panic, illness, pain, depression. Each one chips away at your action efficiency by 5 to 10%. That sounds manageable until you realize these penalties stack multiplicatively, not additively. They don't just add up, they compound. Every new Moodle doesn't add a flat penalty on top of the last one. It multiplies against your already degraded performance, meaning the gap between I'm fine and I'm completely useless is way smaller than you think. Let me give you some numbers. The panic Moodle, triggered just by being near zombies or taking a recent injury, slaps you with a 25 to 40% action speed penalty. Everything you do takes longer. Swinging a weapon, barricading a door, bandaging a wound. Now stack exhaustion on top of that. Your combat accuracy drops by 20% and your damage output falls by 15%. You're slower and weaker and less accurate, all at the same time. But here's the kicker. Once you hit 7 or more active Moodles, your base movement speed gets cut in half, 50%. In a game where mobility is literally the difference between life and death, that's not a penalty. That's a death sentence in slow motion. And then there's depression. This one is brutal because it doesn't go away when the danger does. Get isolated for too long, lose one too many safe houses, watch your supplies dwindle, and depression kicks in and stays for 3 to 7 in-game days. That's days of degraded performance from a single emotional break. The game is punishing you for having a bad week, and that bad week makes the next week worse. That's the death spiral. Each failure to manage your needs generates new Moodles. Those Moodles reduce your capacity to manage needs. The players who are already struggling are mechanically destined to struggle harder. The game doesn't just let you fail, it engineers your failure to accelerate itself. But if Moodles are the slow collapse, wait until you see what exertion does to your body in real time. Rear attacks. You spent hours finding that leather jacket. You reinforced it. You paired it with boots. gloves, maybe even a helmet. You feel protected. But the moment you turn your back, almost half of that survival strategy just disappears. Rear attacks in Project Zomboid are dangerous because the game doesn't give you eyes in the back of your head. There's no rear view indicator, no proximity warning, no audio cue that reliably tells you something is closing in from behind. Your character's field of vision is limited to roughly where you're facing, and zombies approaching from outside that cone get to close the distance without you ever knowing they're there. Every piece of gear you scavenged, repaired, and carefully equipped means nothing if a zombie you never saw latches onto your neck from behind, and they will latch on because the game is structurally designed to make that happen. Here's why. Zombies are silent. They don't growl from 30 meters away to announce their approach. In crowded urban areas, buildings block line of sight constantly, so you're not just vulnerable from behind, you're also far less likely to know something is behind you in the first place. The two worst possible conditions, zero awareness and full exposure, arrive at the exact same time. Now, layer in what we already covered about exertion. During sprinting, you're covering ground fast, but your camera and attention are locked forward. You're blowing past alleyways, corners, and open doors where zombies can stumble out directly into your blind spot. So, the faster you try to escape a threat, the more openings you create for zombies to reach you from directions you can't monitor. Fleeing doesn't save you. It multiplies the angles that can kill you. But the real thing that should terrify you is group encounters. When 5 or more zombies are closing from multiple directions, you physically cannot watch all of them. The ones behind you get free hits while you're focused on the ones in front. The majority of harm you receive in the most dangerous scenarios in the game comes from directions you simply cannot watch simultaneously. This isn't a mechanic you outplay. You can't spin fast enough. You can't position perfectly when 6 zombies are closing from 3 angles. The geometry guarantees that retreating from a group means exposing your back, losing visual tracking on half the threats, and giving zombies free opportunities to grab you from behind. The act of running away is mechanically identical to accelerating your own death, and if the geometry of fleeing wasn't punishing enough, wait until you hear what happens when a zombie reaches through a window you thought was keeping you safe. The helicopter event. You can do everything right in Project Zomboid and still get punished for it. That's the helicopter event in a nutshell. It's the single most dramatic mechanic in the game, and it exists for one reason: to remind you that safety is temporary. Here's how it works. Somewhere between day 6 and day 9 of your playthrough, the game decides you've been alive long enough. A helicopter appears overhead, hovering near your location for anywhere from 1 to several in-game hours. And during that window, it generates a massive noise event that pulls every nearby zombie straight toward your position. That's not a minor inconvenience. That's an extinction event. But the attraction effect isn't even the worst part. The helicopter essentially acts as a giant flashing sign that says, "Survivor here. Come eat." Zombies from a massive portion of the surrounding map begin migrating toward the noise. They don't spawn out of thin air. They walk from everywhere. Every zombie in the area now knows exactly where you are. Every single one. And here's the kicker. You cannot prevent it. You can try to minimize the damage by staying indoors and avoiding open ground, but the event will come. And in the default game, it only happens once per playthrough. That sounds merciful until you realize the game front-loads this nightmare into your first couple weeks, right when you're least prepared to handle it. That's it. That's your consolation prize. The real cruelty is what it does to your progress. Safe zones that took you hours to clear, barricade, and fortify can be completely overwhelmed as hordes converge on your location. You go from established survivor with a functioning base to early game scrambler running for your life. The game literally resets your situation because you were surviving. The community is genuinely split on this one. Some players argue it's essential pacing that prevents early runs from becoming boring loot and build simulators. Others call it rubber banding, plain and simple. You played well, you survived, you built something, and the game punishes you specifically because of that success. Your reward for thriving is a death sentence broadcast from the sky. Whether you think it's fair or not, the helicopter event proves something fundamental about Project Zomboid's design philosophy. The game isn't just trying to kill you with zombies. It's trying to kill you with hope. It lets you build, lets you feel secure, then tears it all away. And somehow, that's not even the worst thing these zombies can do to you. Drag egg down. The community calls it a death cutscene. And honestly, that's the most accurate description of any mechanic in this entire game. Drag down is the moment Project Zomboid looks you dead in the eyes and says your skill doesn't matter anymore. Here's how it works. When 4 or more zombies close within approximately 1.5 tiles of you you at the same time, the game triggers a feeding animation. Your character gets pulled to the ground, and for the next 3 to 5 seconds, you can do absolutely nothing. No swinging your weapon, no using items, no movement, zero input. You sit there and watch your character get torn apart like you're spectating your own death. Let me be clear about something. This is the only mechanic in Project Zomboid that removes all player agency simultaneously. Every other threat on this list you can respond to. You can fight back against rear attacks. You can manage moodles. You can slow down at fences. But drag down? You're a passenger. The game has decided what happens next, and your keyboard is decoration. And what happens next is brutal. Once that animation completes, every zombie involved delivers 8 to 15 points of laceration damage. 5 zombies pin you down? That's 40 to 75 points of damage in a single event. For context, that's enough to take a fully healthy character and leave them on the edge of death in seconds. Not minutes, seconds. But here's where it gets truly cruel. Surviving drag down is almost worse than dying to it. Think about what you wake up to. Your health is shredded. You've got active lacerations on multiple body parts, each one carrying infection risk. Your stamina's gone because you were already fighting when the group overwhelmed you, and you're still surrounded by the exact same zombies that just pinned you to the ground. You survived the cutscene, congratulations. Now survive the aftermath with half your resources and twice the danger. Heavy clothing and armor can reduce the chance of drag down triggering by 15 to 25%, but they cannot prevent it entirely. And considering that this mechanic accounts for roughly 35 to 45% of all deaths involving groups of 5 or more zombies, those odds aren't comforting. This is the mechanic that teaches every Project Zomboid player the same lesson. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how many hours you have. If enough zombies reach you at the same time, the game takes control, and it doesn't give it back until the damage is done. But drag down at least requires a crowd to trigger. The next mechanic, it only needs one zombie, and it's the reason nobody ever truly survives. Infection rate. Every mechanic we've talked about so far kills you in the moment. Infection doesn't. Infection kills you hours later while you're organizing your bookshelf thinking everything is fine. Here's how it works. A scratch from a zombie carries a 7% chance of Nox infection per wound. 7%. That sounds manageable. Most players don't even know scratches carry infection risk at all. They patch the wound, pop a bandage on, and move on with their lives. A laceration bumps the odds higher. But a bite? A bite is a guaranteed death sentence. 100% transmission rate. No exceptions. No luck involved. If a zombie's teeth break your skin, you are dead. Period. But it's that 7% scratch chance that catches people off guard because nobody respects it. And here's where the real horror begins. Nox infection doesn't announce itself with flashing lights. It starts creeping in almost immediately after the wound. Your temperature spikes. Within a few hours, anxiety kicks in. But here's the thing. Those early moodles are subtle. You survived the fight, you killed the zombie, you bandaged up, and your brain filed the entire encounter under handled. But the game didn't file it under anything. The game started a countdown, and the worst part, there is no cure. Zero. Not antibiotics, not rest, not any item in the entire game. Antibiotics treat regular wound infections, the mundane bacterial kind. Nox infection is something else entirely, and nothing in your medical supplies can touch it. Once you're infected, the progression is locked in. Anxiety becomes nausea. Nausea becomes fever. Fever becomes death. You're watching your character deteriorate in real time with absolutely zero tools to stop it. This is what makes infection fundamentally different from every other threat in the game. The zombie isn't the killer. The zombie is just the delivery mechanism. The encounter ends. You feel safe, and the actual lethal process is running silently in the background. Every single scratch becomes a question mark that won't resolve for hours. Did that one matter? Was that the 7% that hit? You don't know. You can't know. And there's nothing you can do about it if it did. It creates this invisible psychological pressure that never stops. Every combat encounter becomes a potential death sentence, and the only way to confirm it is to wait and watch your moodles. Every fight is a dice roll where losing means slow, guaranteed, untreatable death. New players fall for this every single time. The visible threat, the zombie lunging at you, gets resolved the second you swing your baseball bat. Threat over, danger gone. Except it's not. The real threat is invisible, delayed, and completely incurable. By the time you realize infection is the thing that kills you in this game, it's already too late. But infection, as terrifying as it is, still gives you a window. Still gives you a few hours to make peace peace, set your affairs in order, maybe go out swinging. The final mechanic on this list doesn't give you anything at all. Zombification. Everything on this list has been building to this. Every single mechanic, every system, every cruel little design choice funnels into one inevitable outcome. And here it is. Zombification doesn't start when you die. It starts the moment you get scratched. That 7% infection chance from a scratch, that guaranteed death sentence from a bite, those aren't just numbers. They're countdown timers. And once the Nox infection takes hold, the clock is ticking toward a transformation that nothing can reverse. A bite is 100% lethal, not 99%, not almost always. 100%. Your skin starts darkening, your veins turn black, and from that point, you're watching your character die in slow motion. Here's the thing that makes this mechanic so devastating. Once the infection sets in, nothing in the game can save you. No antibiotic, no surgery, no desperate last-second character action. The game doesn't even give you a Hail Mary. A scratch gives you a 7% chance of catching the Nox infection, and a laceration bumps that to 25%. But a bite? That's not a risk. That's a verdict. And roughly 72 hours after infection, your character is gone, dead, then reanimated. And the transformation itself is the cruelest part. When your character finally turns, they become an NPC zombie wandering the map. But they don't keep your skills. They don't carry your inventory in any meaningful way. Every hour you spent leveling carpentry, every base you fortified, every supply run you barely survived, gone. Zombification isn't just death. It's erasure. Total, complete erasure of everything your run built. But here's where it gets truly unsettling. The developers have explicitly said this is the point. The entire game is built around one philosophical statement. You will not survive. You will become what you fight. The only question is how long you can delay the inevitable. That's not a failure state. That's the thesis. And once you understand that, every other mechanic on this list clicks into place like a machine. Line of sight from the very beginning of this video forces encounters. Encounters cause wounds. Wounds start infection timers, and infection timers end here. In zombification, the whole game is a pipeline, a structured mechanical conveyor belt that starts the second a zombie spots you through a window 40 tiles away and ends with you shambling around as one of them. The densest urban zones, the places with the best loot, the places you need to go to survive, are crawling with so many zombies that scratches, lacerations, and bites become practically unavoidable. The game punishes you for playing it, not out of cruelty, but because that's the argument it's making. Survival isn't a win condition. It's a delay tactic. Every fence you tripped over, every window a zombie lunged through, every moodle that stacked until you couldn't swing a bat, every sprint that drained your stamina at the worst possible moment, every rear attack you never saw coming, every drag down that ripped away your agency, all of it was just the game walking you, step by step, toward this screen. The one where your character stands up with dead eyes and joins the horde. You don't lose in Project Zomboid, you just stop being the one holding the controller. If you enjoyed this video and want to see everything Resident Evil gets wrong about survival, click the video on the screen now.